Welcome to this week's episode of Pondering, Play and Therapy with me, Philippa. And this week, my guest is Peppy Hills. And she has got quite a few titles. She's a play therapist, a creative practitioner, a clinical supervisor for play therapists, creative therapists, art therapists. And at the moment, has got two roles, one with a Project Salam and where you do 3 days a week and 2 days a week and 3 days a week as a freelance practitioner supporting and supervising other creative therapists. So that's quite an eclectic role. Peppy, and I'm imagining that you need lots of experience to have got to this point. Did you start as a play therapist? Is that where you began, or doing something else?
I started first of all, and I think it really tracks back almost to my childhood of being that child. And you might notice through this, I'll probably be a little bit jiggly, who's happy and moving. Like
Yeah.
I always felt more myself and more comfortable in my own skin if I was moving. So I would be climbing trees, and physicality felt, I would say now it felt like home. I didn't have words for it back in the day. It was just, this is what I'm drawn to. This is what I love doing. So quite sporty in a way, and so on. Was not pushed, but guided towards sensible qualifications and so on. But actually was always really interested in the arts. And I think imaginative play as a child was such a comfortable world to be in.
Right.
And also to meet others in and create with others. I think looking back, again, of course, I wouldn't have known that at the time. You were just playing, weren't you? And building your worlds and being somebody different or something different or trying a different way of being. But then also reading, just diving into those, again, different worlds. And for me, I've always been fascinated in people and other people, and so you decided to do this. Why? What made, not that it's a wrong decision, but just being really fascinated in how we all tick. The feeling of when we're together, togetherness works really well, personally, professionally, socially, creatively. That being such an exciting, lovely place, and that lovely feel, how it makes us feel, basically. So community arts was really what I was drawn to. Went through a dance training. Wasn't a big one for the rules and regulations, and you stand like this, but you don't stand like this, and you do this. That kind of navigated my way through that. Love choreographing. So again, it was using that sort of imagination and so on. Had a kind of a bit of a crossroads, I guess, a choice, a T-junction, in fact, and I remember sitting with my contemporary dance lecturer who was saying you could perform, you'd be a solid company member, you could go perform, or you could think about teaching and this and that and the other. And the idea of performing, I found performing fun, but being with people and being able to create something, which when I was working through community dance might be a piece of dance, me choreographing with others or others choreographing on me and others, or however it worked, but just holding that space for people to do that was the most exciting. And I don't usually use the word magical, and I can't think of another one because I found it a bit Disney-esque. So it's that kind of almost like an alchemy of stuff happened. People got broader, people got more inspired, motivated, people were creating in a way they didn't know they could. And truth be told, I didn't for sure know they could, but I believe everybody can create, actually, given the right circumstances and the right environment and the right inspiration. We're all creative, I believe. So it felt a huge, exciting place to be, of walking into a room with people who maybe didn't think they could dance or were recovering from various physical things or more emotional, mental things at the time, and creating something together that at the end we'd all go, whoa, who knew we were going to do that? And, how that would, and sometimes that might be shared as a performance, or it might be shared as a resource, or it might be shared in different ways. And that balance of process being more, but definitely equally as important as any product.
It makes me, when you're talking, the word that comes to my mind is connectedness. That's really what it sounds like, is that you were connected, not just in a conversation like we are having, which is lovely to connect that way, but also bodily, and that attunement of your body as well as your mind, that you created something, or that you were just in a space together expressing what you were feeling in that moment or being in that moment. And that sounds, yeah, that connectedness is what we want out of life, isn't it? As a human being, that is what we designed to do, aren't we? Connect.
We're totally wired for connection as part of our survival and our well-being. And I don't mean well-being in terms of, we could have a nice bubble bath. No, it's absolutely vital that we connect. Is one of the NHS top 5 steps to well-being, isn't it? Is along with purposefulness and physical activity and so on, is social relationships. And I believe, and I still believe in very strongly, those relationships that can be explored in a creative way through the different languages of the arts and creative arts. And I would put playfulness and play into that, because I think it's a crucial part of creativity in itself, is a wonderful way. And again, it's been a way in which people who, and particularly children who'd been written off in some respects, or, he's, and excuse the terminology, but too autistic, or that child, no, he's just troublemaker. And you think, actually, we'll see. And it turned out it was a child that needed to run. So we did a lot of running and risk taking in those sessions. We did a lot of throwing and catching things between us to build up trust and a way of reciprocal rhythms between us, because then we began to feel connected and trust each other. And that's how he needed to build trust. So, of course, that wasn't going to show in a classroom where he was being asked to sit and being... I'm sure people doing their best. And when you're in a classroom, as many teachers and educators are, with a class of 30 plus, there's not time to take a child out and run around the playground and really bring curiosity, want to build a connection. And I imagine the vast majority of teachers and TAs and other wonderful people working in education would want to do that given the chance, but the environment doesn't enable that.
And I guess the other thing that was making, when you were talking about connecting and being, it also brings touch in a way that for some children is more acceptable. So if you've got some neurodiversity or some sensory issues, then actually touch, in, I guess, that formal sense of being hugged or kissed, can actually feel quite uncomfortable, can't it? And it's quite, and you don't want it. Some people don't want it in those ways, but maybe exploring it in this creative way, you are touching, but in a way that is more acceptable, more being, and they're still getting that nice feeling of body to body contact.
Absolutely. And I think for a child who might be tactile defensive, when that physical sense from sensory overload or a very sensitive system, there are many ways of exploring together and going through that process of, is this okay? How does this feel? Let's come away from that. Let's go back into that. How does this feel with lycra? If we use this, what if we use elastic? What if we're close but not touching? What if, I mean, also, there's a different question around, I think, emotional intimacy and somebody's tolerance of allowing themselves to feel loved and cared for and accept. And when I say intimacy, closeness, I don't necessarily mean physical intimacy in the sense people's heads might go to, but in that sense of sharing and of nurturing and of accepting nurture and of being able to give it and not push back. And a lot of the children and young people that I've worked with and adults have been more, due to life experiences to date, have a very heavy protection around themselves, which is a survival strategy. And I think something through play therapy training, but something you learn pretty fast if you're doing any community arts work, is that sense of, we can't assume that everybody's up for every single type of drama game or this game or touch or contact improvisation. Some people's idea of a nightmare. And then if you also layer that with past experiences of touch that hasn't been wanted, that maybe has been packaged up as acceptable and isn't, and it doesn't feel right. And I had no idea, I wouldn't have been able to put it in these words. And certainly training in synergetic play therapy more recently, that idea of connection to self and being aware of what your own nervous system is feeling, therefore what it needs and what you might need to do. Is it some rocking? Is it some touch or whatever? And using that sense of self in sessions. I really wish I'd had that many years ago, because you can feel when something's feeling iffy, hesitant, not settled, because nervous systems are dancing the whole time, aren't they? That happens the whole time. So when we're saying, oh, I went into a room and it just felt a bit like I could tell something was going on or something head or whatever, and nobody said anything, but actually people have said things, it just hasn't been verbally. And I think I've always navigated the world more through that felt experience. But
can I just go back
doing that? Sorry.
So you said synergetic play therapy, and is that what you're talking? Is that what you're talking about? Is about noticing yourself and noticing your nervous? Because people will be very familiar with play therapy and play therapist, but that's a new word that's attached to it. And is that just a type of play therapy?
It's an institution, it's an approach. It's more than just play therapy. I'd say it's a kind of life approach as it happens. It's absolutely, you almost can't stop it transferring to your whole life and your way of moving and seeing and feeling the world, more to the point. And it's founded by Lisa Dion. It's based in America. Have a Google. There are some fantastic courses, both long and short, and it is around acknowledging and placing synergy, the dance of the nervous systems and the way co-regulation comes from one nervous system co-regulating another, not telling it to calm down, but actually it's by the therapist connecting to themselves. And absolutely. And it's more than modeling. It is just living the truth in the moment and naming what they're feeling and what they will then do to calm their own nervous system, which is a hugely, I've oversimplified it there, but it's a hugely effective way of making far more sense of, yes, this is about, it's about polyvagal theory, isn't it? It's about our nervous system. So when I say polyvagal theory, that sense of what am I feeling? Am I feeling up here somewhere? Am I suddenly talking really fast? Is my kind of thing of my eyes gone really wide? Am I looking a bit glazed? Or have I gone into a bit of a slump place where everything's a bit slow and I'm quite hard to reach? I'm looking out the window rather than looking at you, or I'm giving you a bit of a hard time, telling you how rubbish and boring you are, or whatever. So
Yeah.
avoiding connecting. Am I in that hyper or that hypo state? Or am I somewhere in that place where I can engage, that I'm open enough? Or am I somewhere in between? Because there are lots and lots of overlaps. It's not as easy as, oh, I'm just hyper today. It doesn't quite go as simply as that.
Yeah.
And Beacon Family Services, of course, has their fabulous lighthouse model that represents those states and can be a wonderful way of helping children and parents check in with how they're feeling and knowing, are they feeling like they're in the lighthouse and able to beam out and connect with others? Are they feeling a bit iffy? They're on those rocks feeling a bit scratchy, bit snappy, bit whatever. Or are they feeling absolutely submerged, overwhelmed, and like they're drowning? And there are fantastic resources on Beacon Family Services.
Yeah. I interviewed Charlotte Jenkins a few months ago, and that app's called Luminous, isn't it? And there is a link to that, and you can use that. And so what you're saying is that the play therapy that you're talking about is connecting to our kind of own bodies in a way that is recognizing, actually, I'm not in a place that is helping me to be regulated, calm, connected, and really in that whole brain that actually there's something else maybe going on for me that is just, I guess if you're a little person, maybe they're a bit too fizzy, or they're a bit too bouncy, out of their normal comfort, or that they just want to hide under their bed and they don't want to do anything. Or as an adult, I guess we might just want to go and sleep a bit more, or not see anybody, or like you say, just maybe be a little bit, I clean. That's mine when I'm in that kind of hyper. I clean. Like I'm not really, I don't really clean in all the time, but when I'm in that place, I want to scrub everything, and I'm irritated by everybody who's not helping me. But if they help me, then they do it wrong, and so there's no winning and so it's noticing that you're in those different states, and then connecting to that. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, and there's not a problem of being in any of those states. Those aren't bad. It's about being able to connect to yourself whilst you're madly cleaning and saying, no, not like that, like this, or whatever. And just thinking, oh, maybe maybe down that cloth for 5 minutes, take a cup of tea outside, then come back in and carry on cleaning. Just having that kind of split. It's not even a pause, it's happening at the same time of, oh, okay, I've really sped up here. I really am. I'm going some on this cleaning, and this is for me, not the house. And just recognizing our felt experience. Yes, I'm moving faster. Yes, I am scratchy, or I'm not really staying still in one place. And similarly with children, it's not that we constantly want them to calm down, because being in a kind of activated state, our nervous systems, if there's a fire alarm, I don't want to be really chilled and sitting back going, yeah, I'll move in a minute. Well, whatever. We need to be activated. If we're in a dance class or something, there's got to be elements of activation. It's when that either escalates or we get stuck in it and we don't recognize we're in it. That's the point, really. So it's about being able to connect to self through noticing, well, our bodies are talking the whole time to us. You just stop listening quite a lot. And of then thinking, so what do I need? What one of Lisa's stop things stock because it's really effective is the how are you? How do you know? What do you need right now?
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
And I
And that
guess,
what do you need can be
yeah,
quite hard when you're going, shut up.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess when you think about parents for children, those things are also good when we think about them, isn't it? Think about our children. Okay, they are more bouncy today, they are more fizzy today, or they're not as activated. So we notice in how they are, and rather than, like you say, calm down, it's thinking about actually what is going on for them. What do they need to help them? Is it just that they've got a bit of energy and they need to go and connect to the outside world a bit and go and run around a field or go and walk in the mud in barefoot, or do they need some snuggles and just some, what, like you say, it's not just about saying, okay, we need to get you back to this moment. But I guess for parents, it's just thinking about, okay, what is going on for my little person right now? And how am I going to connect with that?
Yeah,
And I guess dance, because lots of people dancing around the kitchen or singing a song as loud as you can that you all is can be really connecting, regulating, and attuning. It can help parent and child attune to one another through that kind of movement and dance.
absolutely. And of course you can do your own thing, or you can have eye contact, you can not have eye contact, you can speed it up, you can slow it down. And thinking about the world of DJs, the whole, as I understand it, not point of a DJ, but it's like they're the energy conductor of a
Yeah,
group,
yeah, yeah.
because the beats they're putting on
Yeah.
are designed to go up and then come down a bit, and up and down and up. And there's a reason for that slow section or the slower section, or bringing it back down towards the end of I was going to say a disco, but that's a real, how long ago was that? But that was my world as a
Yeah,
teenager.
yeah.
And I think as parents, if we were able, and not just parents, caregivers of any kind, if we can step into that place of what is that little body telling me, or it might be a big body. Why are you
Mm-mm.
seeing things quite heavily chucked about? Do we need to get into some clay or go outside and whack the,
Mm.
what's that thing on the ball that just goes round and round? It doesn't go
Oh,
in
yeah.
there, but you can let out quite a lot of frustration, or
Mm.
just it's raining and I've been inside for 2 days kind of energy. Or I don't know, I'm an adolescent and I've suddenly got all of this feeling that's come from nowhere. If somebody needs a big cry, to offer a big hug,
Yeah,
or how about I sit beside you, or
yeah.
is there a drink right now that would be really great
Mm.
that we've got in the house? Would you like a hot chocolate? Should we have a hot chocolate together, or shall we? What? Let's watch something. And we all put stuff on the TV, don't we? That's not non-demanding, but it's actually very soothing. It might be something,
Yeah.
and sitting watching that film for, blimey, the amount of times I sat through Mary Poppins with my girls because it was the go-to at some point. And later on, it was the various street dancey hip hop films. And that was a way of us connecting. Was
Yeah.
I equally interested in the subject matter? Absolutely not. But was I interested in spending time with my daughter in a way that, in a place she could meet me?
Mm-mm.
Absolutely. And if it was on the sofa watching that film again, we would be there.
Absolutely. So you did community arts and those sorts of things. And then where did you move from there? What did you do?
So I was working in my community arts pathway. I got more and more interested in working with people who are on the edge of being able to access mainstream arts, if you like, in the sense of it just wasn't currency in their household or in their culture or in their life experience. So things like dance, I was doing a lot of work in the 80s around people with different physical ability, disability, integrated dance. Terminology has changed a lot back in the day. It was I think it was inclusive dance. or integrated dance, and then moved in. And I got really interested in that, of how can somebody, for example, I did work with Louise Glynn, a fabulous community dance artist, and she'd got a hospital schools project that was going at Birmingham Children's Hospital and other places. And I was the kind of second string on that and worked with her. And when you're working with, for example, a child who had use of, I think it was 2 or 3 fingers on his left hand, his eyes, and there was some movement with his right hand. How do we dance? How can dance be our language? And the kind of, for me, challenges coming through a fairly able-bodied kind of route, it was really good for me to use creativity to kind of, and to find a really true meeting point, not of, oh, I'm just going to adapt things, but of what can your role in this be? How am I best here to serve you experiencing dance? So we work ways of, we created eye dances. He had full eye movement and face, actually. He could move face as well. We had devised various finger movements that he choreographed on me. And so on. So I'd been working that way, then got to working in it was the education part of a residential care and education community for young people with complex needs and challenging behaviour, as it was called at the time. And that was for 6 to 19-year-olds. And I was director of creative arts there, and had being able to utilise the arts to build relationships. And this was for young people who found the world really stressful and found building relationships really hard. And I learned a huge amount working there, using my movement, my dance, my drama background, but also being able to work with many other artists, some of whom I've worked with. I've just been so fortunate in many of the talented, creative, wonderful humans that I've worked with over the years. And I worked there for 11 and a half years, I think it was 12 years, and got interested in what is it that's happening in these sessions that's different from what's happening elsewhere, because we're getting less incidents, there are less outbursts, there are less. And also, I think that was happening when the children, young people were outdoors as well. And there were fabulous teachers there and educators and so on. But I was interested in, I tended to work in quite a collaborative way with students. So it wasn't, I've planned the lesson, you're doing this. It was what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What are you interested in? What can we build? So it was using that community arts background, really. And I went on to do a master's to deconstruct my own practice. That's what I ended up doing. And it was at University of Chester. And it was a master's in creativity and education for the professions. And I can't tell you how much I loved doing that master's, because it was such a wonderful kind of pause period in my life. I was still working. I did it part-time, I self-funded it. But it was a way of beginning to put words and looking at other people's theories and thinking, yeah, no, that doesn't quite fit. Oh, I like that. That's relevant, and so on. And equally, I was doing a fair amount and had done a fair amount of work in the early years kind of sector. So looking at the beautiful, amazing bodies and physicality of babies and children, and what we were missing a bit as adults in terms of, it's all communication. Actually, I've always called it wordless chatter is going on the whole time. Can we get better at joining people there, really, and rediscover that in ourselves as well? So my master's was great. At the end of that, was really interested in, realised it was quite a playful way that I was working with children, reciprocal.
Can I just stop you? I'm interested in the next bit, but I just want to go back, because you just said about that playful chatter, and interested in can we get back to that? And I just wondered, what did you conclude? Can we get back to that as adults? Can we get back to that role of kind of playful chatter that isn't verbal?
I think so. I don't think it's always comfortable. And I think the speed at which you connect with that is very variable and is very related to the individual's past experiences. And I think it takes us to quite a true, pure communication. And
Yeah.
I think we can feel very vulnerable there. So I think for some people that nervous systems can become quite activated. And it's that thing I was talking about earlier of you too close.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever had teenagers or parenting teenagers, but
I
somebody
have,
once
which
said
is,
to me,
I don't know if the microphone's going to pick this up. My teenage, actually, he's in his early 20s, is ringing at the moment, and I'm trying to switch
right,
my
no,
phone. So I don't know if it picked it up. If it did, I'm very sorry. But yes.
no, I didn't.
Oh,
That's not the reason I mentioned it. It was more
okay.
somebody once said to me, oh, it's the, where are you, Mum? You're too far away. And then you're too
Yeah.
close. Go. And that kind
Yeah.
of, oh, where am I best to be? Like this. And I think we we can go through a process of stripping ourselves of the kind of social conventions and the politeness and our survival strategies of avoidance.
Yeah.
It will challenge those. And I used to do a lot of CPD, so training and inviting people in to move who were like, oh, I don't dance, I don't. And I was like, you've got a pulse. So actually, there's things moving inside of you. It's just about us getting a little bit more involved with that and noticing more. And if we see nonverbal communication for what it is, which is the communication, and that's often the communication that lands in our gut, that lands with our nervous system quicker than the words, then we can build different kinds of relationships, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think going back to the synergetic play therapy reference, for me, that really strengthened the notion of the importance of felt experience and of attuning to, oh, actually, I'm feeling a bit whatever it is, or that really made my tummy jump, or I can feel a tightness here when you talk about such and such, or when such whatever happened, and naming it, and I suppose owning it, not that we're trying not to own it, but just bring it in the space, because that stuff is going on the whole time for us. And I think children and young adults and even adults, we're not encouraged to bring that stuff.
So we've just had a bit of a blip there, Peppy. So we're just going to carry on. So you were just saying that we're not, as adults, we're really not encouraged to notice our bodies, and we dismiss them. And I wonder, I suppose, we were talking, I was also thinking about how has social interactions, that it's changed through we text more, don't we? And we talk not in person as much. Do you think that has an impact as well? I know that's probably a whole other subject.
I think it is a huge subject, but I think undoubtedly it does. Look at lockdowns. That had a massive effect on us, didn't it, in terms of not being
Absolutely.
able to be together in person. And the being together in person bit is that nervous system, that whole felt experience of being with another. And that's what we were all starved of, really, weren't we? Which has had a huge impact on people's well-being, health
Yeah.
in all aspects, I would say, and therefore a knock-on to, yes, children being potentially less independent, not having some of the social skills and so on, and some of the learning skills. Therefore, excuse me, educational aspirations, which doesn't mean it can't be backfilled to a degree. So I'm not saying, oh gosh, that generation, but just more the impact that had on us. We all felt that, and that was globally felt,
Absolutely.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
So does it matter? Yes, it does. And what do we do about that? I think keep bringing the felt experience into the conversation, into the here and now, because that's not about telling other people how they feel. That's about how you feel in the. So hence the blip that having frozen, I can feel I'm a little bit more hovery now, thinking, is that going to happen again? Is that not? And just acknowledging that. So within a play therapy session, and similarly, I think it's woven in some ways through TheraPlay and other modalities, bringing that felt sense in a way that's appropriate and supportive and useful within the session. And that is part of the co-regulation.
Absolutely, because we do, even with little ones, I think we use verbal communication to distract, to manage, to encourage, to regulate. But actually, when we are a little bit more stressed or a little bit more worried or any of those things, that's the first thing that starts to go, isn't it? Is our ability to cognitively process and think, and what is left is in our bodies. And like you say, with TheraPlay, I also do something called BOSS, building underdeveloped sensory systems, and that's all about trying to connect quite little children back to their body and noticing their body and having it noticed as well about actually, I'm thinking that you're letting me know that this is really bit tricky for you today, and that's okay. That's a bit tricky, but without them having to use the words, that actually we can just be present bodily. And I guess play therapy, the arts, creative therapy really encapsulates that, doesn't it? That connection to the world through, I like to think of being rather than knowing. And there is a big difference between being and knowing, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think it's the difference between being with another person and doing something to another person almost. And sometimes in life, we want surgery done to us. I don't want to co-construct that. Thank you very much. I haven't got. But in terms of working out what's going on for me, as if I was a child or at whatever stage of my life, I don't want somebody doing that to me. I want somebody to walk with me and be able to ask the useful questions and stretch me at times. And just coming back to supervision, one of the things I loved about my supervision that I received within my play therapy training, and still do have a brilliant supervisor, is that balance between challenge and support. And I think that's crucial in life. Because when we're not challenged, we stop growing to a certain degree. And so we don't need to be growing all the time. We need to be supported sometimes. And as a parent, caregiver, taking that into that context is those moments of when to challenge and stretch a bit. But I'm wondering how that's going to have a knock on school then, if you're thinking to do or whatever. But sometimes that just sounds rubbish, or both of those actually in the same conversation, maybe. Yes, absolutely. We're human beings. We're not
Absolutely.
human
And I
doings.
just think that that's so important. Can you just tell us, I'm just aware that we're running out of time really, and I have loads of questions, but one of the one of the things that I guess I wanted to talk about was Project Salam. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So Beacon Family Services is, as people may know from your previous podcast, but a community interest company founded and chief exec now by Charlotte Jenkins. And one of the streams of work they were beginning to develop was working with refugee families. And that was during lockdown. City of Birmingham, where Beacon Family Services is based, it's also where I'm based, is a city of sanctuary, one of the many around the country. And the idea of cities of sanctuary is that there are organisations who come together to be able to wrap around families and offer support, different kinds of support to help families resettle. And these are families, as probably most people will know, but are leaving their home countries under excruciatingly stressful circumstances, are often leaving family, are
So
often
Project Salam
Mm.
supports displaced families, is that
It
right?
does,
Families.
particularly refugee families who've come through government schemes, support schemes and resettlement schemes. And it's about us being one of many organisations. Some will be helping with housing and employment and so on. And ourselves, we're looking more at the relational well-being of parent-child, because these families, like I was saying, have made extremely difficult circumstances. It's enforced migration in the sense of it probably wasn't something they were thinking about prior to wars taking place and conflicts within their home countries. Once they arrive in their country of sanctuary and their city of sanctuary, the challenges don't stop. I think it is easy from a distance to think, oh, they'll be fine now. There are huge challenges that go on and on, not the least around language, systems, education, expectations, cultural differences, and so on. Also, I think it's fair to say, and it's been very clearly communicated via different media streams, it's not necessarily always a caring, open-arm welcome that these families, it very often isn't. And that's on top of, we're talking about layers of trauma. So we're talking about complex trauma at the very least.
Yeah.
So Beacon Family Services, we offer Project Salam, and it is mainly TheraPlay based, not totally though, but it's working with parents and children to give them the time and space, as TheraPlay does, to regroup, and relationships absolutely exist. So it's very different from working within an adoptive context, if you like, with TheraPlay, working with refugee families, because the relationships exist, but they've been under stresses and strains from everything that's been part of the journey, and that is part of the current resettlement. So families are referred to us by other organisations such as housing associations, by caseworkers and so on. We would go and see a family. I would have a talk in the intake meeting, and I would be building those relationships we've been talking about, of how much do you want to share? Do you feel safe with me? Exploring, not asking that directly, but working out all of that in the intake meetings to try and work out, is this the right time for you? And is what we're offering the right offer for you at this point? Because it is an offer. It's not something they have to do. And we're potentially another professional coming into their space and asking questions and so on. So we've given a tremendous amount of thought of making our offer the best cultural match we can, in the sense all of our intake materials and information materials are translated into the home language of the family that we're working with. And we've to date worked with Syrian refugees from Afghanistan and Ukraine too, and then working with an interpreter in person wherever is relevant and possible, which is we certainly budget for it being every step of the way. So there are bundles, programs of TheraPlay, so working with parent and child, MIM assessments, which is that play assessment that takes place at the beginning so that you can really fine tweak and put together the right activities for that parent and child. And then the parent reflection sessions taking place. They will also be left with, we will hand over resources so that they can carry on with the activities that have worked particularly well for them as a family, to be able to enjoy each other and come back. And like we were talking before, that if that child does need that high energy, kind of balloon bounce or whatever, the parent goes, oh yeah, we could do this or this. Or if it's more of a soothing kind of rhythmic exercise that's needed, they've got lots of ideas for that as well. And they've got a shared experience of how that's felt together. We also have a hub of resources that are translated resources, both written but also audio. So for families and adults who their preferred way of receiving information isn't through written word, many of their blogs, which are on basic caregiving, parenting kind of issues that wherever you are, you're probably going to come across at some point. And just some thoughts around that, and from a kind of relational perspective, if you like. And so we've got a fantastic range of resources that if anybody just goes onto our website, you can find it through Help for Refugee Families, and please use them and share them because they are a fabulous resource and they've been very well received. And we've also provided and are able to offer training for professionals who are working and supporting families who are resettling, to think about and become more attuned to the relational aspects of the experience, not only for the families, but the way that people can strengthen their interactions with families from a relational lens. And that's a 2-day training that we ran twice last year and we'll be running again this year, which again was very well received, with 100% of people who attended saying that they felt there was a renewed and an increased meaningfulness that they could take forward now into their work, even if they weren't, I don't know, they might be advising on housing or something, but they still felt there was transferable understanding and so on from that. So working with these families is almost a collection of everything I've come with and been through, and now with the kind of respect and challenge in a positive way of, so how can this be meaningful? What can we build together? Going back to that, those early days of me choreographing with people, co-constructing creatively, this is looking at what can we achieve together that's going to help you as a family. We've been working with some quite large Afghani families who wanted a whole family experience. So that was, learning. As an organisation, we've learned so much through working with Project Salam. The central core elements of our work are solid and are absolutely applicable, but making it culturally attuned and as good a match as possible. There's been a lot of learning for us, and we're still learning every step of the way, and would love to connect with other people who are working similarly, whether it be through play or other modalities, because I think there's a lot of practice to share and ways we can support each other and come together as a community of practice. Of working with displaced people comes with particular challenges, particular joy, particular ways of working. Yeah, there's certainly things I know now I wish I'd known at the beginning, but that's the nature of it, isn't it? But
absolutely. And I'll put a link to the website in the bio, in the description of this episode. I was just thinking that there must be, well, I'm wondering if there is lots of rewards and lots of joy in doing this work, but also a lot of kind of heartache, really, because a lot of, I would say most of these families, if you've made a journey like that, you've made a journey because it's untenable, or more than untenable, to stay in your home country or your hometown or city. You don't travel that far in the conditions that they've traveled in just because you fancy coming to Birmingham and having a look. You're coming for very specific reasons. So I imagine those stories, those experiences, for those people, obviously are tragic and traumatic. But I guess as a worker, also the impact of that on you. But then I wonder if the joy of helping, those moments of connection or those moments of playfulness that maybe families can have, because they can be in this room with these resources, with this space. And I imagine as a worker that it's, yeah, a double-edged sword, really, in many ways.
It is, it absolutely is. And it really, and what you've just said articulates beautifully that the world can be beautiful, it can be bizarre, it can be brutal. And all of that happens at the same time very often. Our experiences are never one thing, and it's one thing, part of the synergetic training, explores wonderfully. Yeah. And also within the being able to hold that then as a practitioner is not something I could have done in my early days, hence, or I couldn't have done it comfortably, put it that way. And I guess I've needed to become comfortable with the uncomfortable, to be able to stay connected enough to self, to know either I'm disconnecting or, wow, I've got to a full point. What is it that I need? And supervision, both my play therapy supervision, which is ongoing, but also supervision that Beacon Family Services provide too, as part of being part of the company, is absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial to support that connection to self, to support us doing our utmost for each family, and of being aware of the cost of and the balance of. And yes, the joy, seeing a mom who was so held and so suspicious of me as another professional as I came in, of monosyllabic, if any words, very tight, very held within quite a few sessions. I'm not saying it was a quick, easy thing. It wasn't. But of laughing so much in one of the family sessions that she was like flopping against her son, who was 19 and like loving this playing. He used to rush in from college and go, "Have I missed it?" and join us halfway through. Those moments of there can be joy despite hideousness, despite pain. It doesn't wipe away the pain, but I believe it's a balm in some way, and that those scales, they're at least shifting a bit. They're not just that it's, and some of what you hear, it is barely bearable. It's extremely hard, more, and it's also an honor to receive and be trusted enough for things to be shared. There are moments in, gosh, there's so much within this. It's why I knew I wanted to be a clinical supervisor. I already was one by the time I was working on Project Salam, but it was knowing how important having your own person you can go to be every part of you that you are in holding everything that you were describing. It's also using the, again, going back to Lisa Dion and synergetics, the 1 foot in, 1 foot out, of being able to be with somebody but not being overwhelmed in that moment with them, because then I'm of no use. However, I'm also not distancing to the point of, but yes, and tidy that away. It's part of that felt experience our bodies carry. We know the body keeps the score. We know we carry who we are, what we've felt, and there's room for that to be part of our relationship with the families. And I think that's partly why Project Salam works so well, because relationships are completely at the heart of it, as it is with the work of Beacon Family Services, at the core of the organisation's mission, and therefore it's always relationship first, and whatever that brings with it, and then making sure that we can be held enough.
And I guess you bring that then to your supervisees, do you? That when you're, because the other part of your week is doing supervision and consultation and guiding of play therapists, creative therapy. So I'm guessing that you're holding them like in different experiences, but you're still doing that holding and connecting.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the threads. It's the web, isn't it, of Dr. Lisa Cherry's new book, isn't it? Talking that web of belonging and that web of, and I think the idea of that web is absolutely how I see everything that I do. So your very first question of, so where have you come from? Where, how it sort of thing is, it's a great big web actually, but connection and body, felt experience, working with heart, body, head, hands is absolutely weaves through who I am, I think. And I would really struggle to be otherwise. So the idea of the therapist as a completely neutral mirror is not one that I could align with easily. And synergetic play therapy is a wonderful approach that really challenges that, to say, no, it's really important for those felt experiences that are about two people in a room to be named and present and an active part of the therapeutic process, actually.
I think that's a whole other episode, Peppy, really, because I think that I'm just kind of, that is so important, isn't it? I think is about what do we bring into that therapeutic space, and what do, as a therapist or a supervisor, what do you bring, and how do you know what you bring, and how do you know it's relevant to the moment? And those are really hard things, I think, to hold in your mind, whether you're with a family, whether you're in supervision, I guess in some ways in your own relationships, although less so in your own relationships, because I guess there's more of a fluidity to those. But I get certainly in supervision and with families, for me, I think it's really important that my children, my families, and the supervisees that I have, that there are, when it's relevant, that they get a part of me. Not that I'm going in there and saying, well, do you know what my week's been like this week? Let me just tell you, and this is what's going on for me. It's not about that. But if somebody's having an experience and I can feel that experience and it connects to an experience that I've had, and maybe you're making in your own mind, how helpful is this is my experience going to be to somebody else's experience? And all that you have to do very quickly in supervision or in therapy, don't you? Around, I'm going to share this because it's going to be helpful for you rather than me. And it's always that thing about, it's about them, isn't it? But we do have to bring, and that connection of our nervous systems, of our bodies, connects with our experiences. And yeah, I think that's a very interesting conversation, really.
It is. And I think, just as a kind of precursor, we are bringing who we are into it, going back to that wordless chatter that's going on the whole time, those nervous system dances. We absolutely are. And maybe there's that moment of, say, for example, I was just thinking of, there have been some moments where I've just felt like, and said with a family who've just shared something, and we'll say, oh, that just feels huge hearing that.
Mm.
And sometimes that's enough, and that is it. Actually, I may not have an experience on the same level that they have. That next step of is it, or in different circumstances, is it useful? And sometimes to a supervisee, I might say, if they're asking a question, and I might say, wow, let me give you this scenario. This was something that happened. What do you, and we'll unpick it together, and I'll share some of that. Yeah, and I had that feeling of, but I'm not supposed to. When you're first learning in play therapy, that thing of how much of me can be in this room as a therapist, and so on. It is a really common area to visit with supervisees who will just be going, the child's saying to me, stop. When I say what they're saying, they say, you're just saying what I'm saying. And it's about unpicking what's meaningful as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in a relationship, in a real life relationship, do you just mirror the whole time? No, you don't, because it's a bit weird. And we don't want to weird out people.
No.
But there are times to leave space and just do a So you
And I think it comes back to that connectedness, doesn't it? Like, I just think when I go and greet my little people in the reception, they all believe that they are my favorite little person, and they are in that moment, absolutely. And I greet them like with whatever greeting they need. So some of them need me to just notice, oh, you've got some new trousers today. Those are great. Others need to jump on the sofa and jump on me and hold me like they haven't seen me for a year. And that's okay. Do you know what I mean? And that is that bringing of you into, and they get the whole of me in that moment for those 50 minutes, but in a way that they need me to be. And
absolutely, there's not a one size fits all, is there? There are parameters. So just going back to your thing of, yes, they don't want your whole life experience when there's a difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yeah.
We're not there to leak our stuff, but we are there to be in the moment with them, which is what you're describing. And I think also, having worked with some people at end of life, through creative and body-based modalities, ways of being together, and we've got now.
Yeah.
So if you've got a little one, not necessarily end of life, but going, why can't I have more play therapy tomorrow? Or why can't I have it but we've got now. It's just me, and it's now. Yeah. And that's the reality, is just being in the present with somebody is so powerful, is it not? No,
and it is that being that
matter. I see, I feel you, we are here together, boom. And that's, to be able to work within that is just such a blimmin' honour.
It is absolutely, I just, every day when I see the kids that come through my door, it fills my heart with joy. It fills my heart with a heartache sometimes. Do you know what I mean? But there's also a joy, a privilege, I think, is the word, that whether their families who are displaced, their families going through adoption, their birth families who are reunifying, whatever it is, the fact that they will come and spend that time, even when it's been really tricky, can be very difficult. Yeah. So I think we've come back to connection, haven't we? That's where, so absolutely. I think that's a great place to end, is that. Yeah, so thank you so much, Peppy. That was so interesting. I will put a link to the website at the end. What about for supervision for you? Have you got space? Do you have a contact?
Probably contacting me directly, and it's very simple, peppyhills@gmail.com.
Okay.
If it's connected through work with refugee families, that would be through Beacon Family Services. But really happy to hear from people who want to share practice, or if more formally people are looking for supervision, or organisations are looking for group supervision for staff and so on. That's something I offer too. Yeah.
So I'll put those links at the end, and hopefully we'll have you on again and maybe talk about kind of supervision and all those other bits. So thank you so much for your time.
Real pleasure.